I went through a major life transformation. I came out of the closet. I got a divorce. I started a couple of new businesses. No greatness happens inside your comfort zone. Without fear, there is no opportunity to be brave. And bravery can look like something very different for all of us. When you choose bravely more regularly, that the people around you will do the same.
Dear Family is a podcast hosted by Rachel Steinman, a writer, an educator, and a mental health advocate. And Rachel gets us up close and personal, so we feel a strong connection, familiarity, and comfort with her guests. So settle in and join us as we search for true healing and journey with Rachel and her most interesting guests.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Dear Family, the podcast. I hope that you had a great Thanksgiving. I realize it is one we will never forget. I have to say it was really sad to not be able to welcome my entire family and all my friends that normally come, but it was really special having that time alone with my daughter, who will be in college next year, and my other daughter and my husband, and it was really one that I will never forget. And I think that one of the quotes that I've been seeing floating around a lot is that this year, 2020, is not about trying to get more. It's about appreciating what we do have. And so I just want to say I'm so grateful to have you listening and following along. So thank you so much for subscribing and writing those great reviews and following me on all the social media platforms at Right Now Rachel, that's right with a W. I also want to say, because I'm a mom and this is a podcast about Dear Family, I wanted to let you all know about my younger daughter, Molly Sierra. She is a real accomplished musician, and to help get you in the holiday spirit, I highly recommend you check out her brand new YouTube channel. She did the artwork for Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, as well as recorded an incredibly beautiful and haunting rendition. So I will have that link in my show notes, and also you can find it at Molly Sierra _ on YouTube. Without further ado, enjoy Heather Vickery. She is phenomenal. Heather Vickery grew up with very conservative Republican parents. When she came out of the closet after a decade-long marriage, she became a single mom with 4 daughters. She also unearthed her authentic self and began a transformational journey to create the life she always wanted, and that was through bravery. Heather took her award-winning Chicago-based event planning business and her global leadership with over 20 years as an entrepreneur, and she leveraged it to become a success and leadership coach. She guides individuals towards greater personal and professional fulfillment by helping them get over their fear and into intentional bravery. Heather says, when we choose bravely on purpose, we choose bigger, have bigger successes, and it's contagious. A celebrated public speaker, Heather inspires audiences and empowers attendees with the tools they need to live bold and successful lives through creating balance, time management, mindfulness, as well as countless systems, strategies, and boundaries. She's the author of Gratitude Journal, Shift Your Focus, and Grow Grateful, a gratitude journal for kids and families. Heather's also the host and executive producer of the Brave Files podcast. You can't help but be moved to be brave when you listen to Heather. Welcome, Heather. I'm so happy to have you. You and I initially connected through a Facebook group called She Podcasts because we're both women podcasters. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here. I love She Podcast, and I absolutely love the podcasting community in general. It is such a happy, open, and affirming community.
I totally agree with that. This is a podcast called Dear Family. Tell us a little bit about your family.
I have 4 daughters, ages 7 to 16. I'm a single mom, but I do have a partner, and my partner has a son who is with us half the year, not at one time, but spread out. And we live in a little town just outside of Chicago called Forest park. And my family dynamic has shifted quite a lot in the last 8 years of my life because I went through a major life transformation. I came out of the closet. I got a divorce. I started a couple of new businesses, and it's been a wild journey.
You're currently living outside of Chicago. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Indianapolis, Indiana.
You came out of the closet at 38 years old with 4 daughters. How did your then husband take that news?
It's a very interesting roller coaster-y story. He's never actually had a lot of issue with my sexuality. His problem was that he did not want to get a divorce. He would have been fine staying married and being, I'll use the term creative in that. And I wasn't, because it's not about sex. Your sexuality isn't about sex. Your sexuality is about having a real partner and completely being yourself and living authentically. And that didn't work. So he was fine with me coming out. He just wasn't fine with me wanting a divorce.
Were you in denial about your sexuality up until 38?
Great question. People ask me that a lot. Most folks look at me like I have lost my mind when I say that no. Now that I look back, there were plenty of signs. If I'd known to look for them, I'd been like, oh, that may be okay. But, I grew up, and most women, I imagine you've had the same experience, women talk about women in ways that men do not talk about men. We say, oh my God, she's so pretty. Oh, she's gorgeous. Oh, she's hot. And so I was not aware that the way that felt internally for me was different than the way it would feel internally for somebody who was straight. And I was raised in the Midwest, and you got married to somebody of the opposite sex and you had kids, and you just kind of sucked it up and you were happy about it. And so I did all the things I was supposed to, and I knew I wanted children. So that was always a priority for me. And I knew that I found women attractive, but I just didn't know what that meant until I got much older. And then it became more and more clear, and to the point where it was not something I could deny anymore. I didn't know any lesbians growing up. I don't know where they were in college. I always joke that could have been a game changer. Like if I had met the lesbians in college, maybe I would have gone down a different path. But I will tell you this, and I mean it from the bottom of my heart, I wouldn't change a moment of my life. I wouldn't take any chances to not have my kids and to not be able to now have the thriving business that I have because of my lived experiences. I'm very grateful for every step that I've taken.
You have found your authentic voice. But
Absolutely.
There is something to be said about seeing people as models. Representation makes a difference and can save some heartaches for sure and be inspirational.
Absolutely. There are parts of the world where there's still a lot of shelter and a lot of hate and not a lot of open and affirming people. But where I live, is this wonderful community. My children have never not known that these are all options for them. And I love watching the children navigate that. We have a lot of trans friends, and my third daughter, who's 10 now, but has always been just really easygoing when it comes to understanding that gender is fluid and not to be understood. And my sister adopted a baby last winter, and I said, oh, Aunt Robin's having a boy. And my daughter goes, well, at least we think he's a boy until he decides for himself.
That's so great.
And I was like, yes, that's what we're growing. That's the generation we're growing, is the people that stop making assumptions and just let everybody live their lives. And they know that the possibilities are endless.
I have daughters that act very much the same way, and they're always teaching me. I love their open-mindedness and their lack of judgment. You were married for a decade, and now you're a single mom of 4 who has a partner with a son. Do the girls still have a relationship with their father?
Oh, they have a great relationship with their fathers. We have full shared custody. Sometimes we get along swimmingly. Sometimes it's very tense, but we agree that our number one priority is our girls. So they are with me half the time and they're with him half the time. And we see each other and talk to each other multiple times a week. So we don't have a choice in making this work. This has to work because it's for the kids. There's no way around it. I am not a judgmental person. I understand that everybody shows up where they are based on their own lived experience, but I struggle to understand parents who choose to be so selfish that they are not willing to get along in a divorce situation to make life easier for their kids. I have a hard time with those folks. Like, I don't really want to spend my free time with my ex-husband, but I do. Because if my kids are there and somebody is sad or they fall and they hurt themselves or there's a breakup or they need help with their homework and it's the kind of thing that's my specialty, I just go over and do it. And he comes over here and does it if that's what we need. And so they have a great relationship with him, and I will always do everything I can to protect that relationship.
It's so great. My parents are divorced and they've always gotten along, and it's a game changer.
My parents divorced when I was 9 weeks old.
Oh, wow.
And I love my dad a lot. I saw him every other weekend until I became a teenager. And then it was maybe once a month, or he'd come in town. He lived about 2 hours away, and he'd take me out to dinner, or we'd go to a concert, or we'd have some fun, but there was no parenting. He had another family. He showed up to their parent-teacher conferences. He showed up to their t-ball games and their concerts, but he didn't show up to mine. He didn't ever look at a report card. And it was not until my high school graduation party that I realized it was the first time my parents had been in the same room at the same time, other than a drop-off pickup situation in my entire life. And it was terrifying. My mom didn't make it bad. It was just the way it was. I didn't know better. My parents have still only been in the same room a handful of times. One of them, which was very joyfully, was when my oldest daughter was born. And it was one of the only times in my adult life that my dad really did show up. He came to the hospital and he waited, just like my mom and my stepdad. And my mom and my stepdad had been married for 30 years. So he's my dad. I love him, and my ex-husband's parents. And they sat and waited. And it was short-lived. The other three, they weren't so important. But she was the first grandchild. So that mattered to everybody. And I just kind of have learned to live my entire life being disappointed by my dad's choices. Or I could just take what he was willing to give and enjoy that and not spend any energy being upset about it, which drives my mom crazy. She wants me to be really mad, and I'm just not willing to let that own my life. So we have a good time with each other, maybe once a year. He's great with the kids. I text him on occasion, and that's enough for me because that's all he's got. And so I'll take it.
And you're giving yourself a gift by not holding on to that and letting it go and forgiving, because as we know, anger really is harder on you.
The only thing you can do with anger is either let it go or create some positive action. And I don't know who your listenership is, so hopefully this is okay. As we're recording this, we've come off this ridiculous election cycle, and I'm angry. I'm glad about the election results, but I'm angry about the way it's going down. And I'm angry that there are so many people who I think are willing to sign off on harm. And so I decided to channel my anger into canvassing and phone banking in Georgia, because I can do something about that. And I have kids who are like, can we make phone calls? Can we send postcards? Yes, you can. And so I just take my anger and channel it in something that I feel is healthy and productive instead of letting it eat me alive.
I am right there with you. I think action is the best antidote to those feelings. Well, that leads me perfectly. Your parents are Republican, is that correct?
They're both solid Republican. A very proud moment for me is when my mother said she was going to vote for Joe Biden. My mom has come a long way. My family on my mom's side, who I was always very close to, they're rednecks. They're not the diverse group of people that I am. And I will say this, and I will give them all the props in the world. They make a lot of mistakes and they do a lot of things I don't agree with. But when I came out, every single one of them said, well, you're ours and we love you.
That was my question.
You know?
That's wonderful.
And my dad, who is not just a Republican, but a very religious Christian, he said, I don't understand it, but I guess I don't have to. And I guess my only job is to love you. And I said, yes, I don't need you to understand. I just need you to love me. And he's been great. And my mom was the least great of all of them, who's been my cheerleader and champion my whole life. And when she heard my dad say that, she literally stopped her in her tracks. Because what I have since learned is that her fear was that I would be harmed, that by coming out, people would be hurtful and hateful to me. And as soon as she realized that that was not going to happen, then she was more open-minded. And now she and my partner love each other. They text, they send recipes, they play cards together. And my mom will tell you that my coming out was the most important thing that's ever happened to her in her life, because it changed everything for her.
How did it change everything for her?
because she started to look at the world in a different way. And she didn't have to be a yes girl anymore. She didn't have to do things the way they'd always been done. She could see the other side. I was raised in one of those covert racist families where everyone was equal and we quote unquote didn't see color, but don't date the Black boy. It was very covert. She felt like she was affirming. I had all sorts of diverse friends. So somehow the foundation she laid in me allowed me to become the social justice warrior advocate that I am. But she was so tied to being the perfect person that everyone wanted her to be or thought they wanted her to be in society. And my coming out showed her that there was another way to live that was healthier.
We're going to talk about how your bravery and your authentic self is contagious. We'll get to that in a second. You are a success and leadership coach. How did that role come about?
I've been an entrepreneur for 23 years, and it's a weird thing to say. It's a long time. My first career, my first business was as an event and wedding planner. And I had a background in nonprofit events and corporate events, and I have the entrepreneurial spirit. Both of my parents are entrepreneurs. That part was easy. So I ended up creating what for over a decade was one of Chicago's premier luxury wedding planning firms. All the props in the world to event pros because it's a really thankless, hard job. And as I was going through my personal transformation in my life and even in myself, almost like the butterfly, it was really ugly before the wings sprouted. It was really painful and not pretty. I started to wonder, what was the bigger calling for me? Because I really didn't think that that's what it was. It didn't feel honest and authentic, and it didn't feel comfortable. And I was working with my own coach who's recognized for me that I was already coaching because I would report so-and-so called and asked if I could talk to them about this. They want to try this and this person wants to do that. And I got stopped at this event and I got this email and he's like, Heather, you're already coaching. And I didn't want to be a coach because up until meeting him, my experience with coaches was that they were kind of car salesmen. They were a little slimy and I didn't trust most of them. But meeting him and knowing that it didn't have to be like that, and then seeing that it's something I was naturally inclined for and that people were already seeing that in me, I went for it. I always say coaching found me. I didn't find it. And I burned it all to the ground. It took me a couple of years to get myself out of the events industry and firmly rooted in only coaching, but it's just been magical. And it's fun because a lot of my clients are still in the events industry. I certainly don't specialize in it, but I started there because those are the people who knew me and they all go, oh yeah, this is it. They'll have me speak at their events and like, this is where you belong.
I'm assuming they need some guidance with COVID.
They are a resilient group of people.
Yes.
And I am utterly impressed every second at how they're being creative and finding new ways to thrive and serve clients and grow their industry. And it is really hard. The biggest thing in the events industry or in any service-based industry that I find is creating any sort of boundaries or work-life harmony because they are so used to having to be 100% available 100% of the time. And that's just bullshit. You just don't have to do that. I know that firsthand because the last 5 years of my business, I had really strong boundaries and we still were able to thrive. You know, there are a lot of people like that, a lot of industries like that. So being able to help them realize that your business doesn't have to take over your life, even if you love it, even if it lights you up, and that you can create a balance.
You want people to get into a space of feeling uncomfortable. Why is everything that we want on the other side of uncomfortable?
Because we like to play it safe. We like to be comfortable, but no greatness happens inside your comfort zone. If you look back even at your own life, even Rachel, for you thinking about starting this podcast, was it a scary thing for you to do?
Very much so.
Wouldn't it have just been easier to not do it because you would have known what to expect? So we have to push ourselves. I don't want anyone to attempt to be fearless. Fearlessness is for sociopaths and 3-year-olds. Fear is a natural human emotion. And I want you to look at it. What are you actually afraid of? You know, if I waited to start coaching until I was confident, I would never be coaching. I had to try it. There's no success without failure, and there's no failure without trying. And so you've got to get uncomfortable to do that. There's a different kind of uncomfortable. I always ask people, does this make you uncomfortable in a good way? And then my clients laugh. If you're uncomfortable because someone's sexually harassing you, we don't want you to be that kind of uncomfortable. But if you're uncomfortable because it feels a little scary, that's what we're going for. That's usually a good indicator that you're on the right track.
It's kind of like a little discomfort, but with a hint of excitement.
It is. And neurologically, the same thing's happening in your body. The neurons are doing the same thing. It's your mind that tells you whether or not this thing is bad and scary or this thing is really exciting. And so when you start to feel that and know the difference, then you can mentally talk your way into it. And I always say, look for the why on the other side. Why do I want to do this thing that I'm not sure I actually want to do? What's the result of having taken this action? And if that result is something you want, then the action is worth doing. And you can sort of push yourself into that space.
I know that you wear heels when you public speak or give your Brave Method workshops.
In such a long time.
Okay, well.
No, not since I've done it, but since I've been able to wear heels. It doesn't do me any good to wear heels on Zoom. So
it's true. It's true, but you still get out of your pajamas at least, right?
I do.
Why does how you step into a space, even if it's a virtual space, why does that matter?
I'll tell you the background story on the heels. I do wear heels when I speak or train or do anything in a public forum where you can see my whole body. Right. I used to think that I did it because people reacted to me differently. What I learned was that I reacted to me differently. I felt taller, thinner, more confident, more in control. And when that was the energy I gave off, that was the energy the audience gave back. And so whatever it is that makes you feel like the most badass version of yourself, do that thing when you need to call on that superpower. And for me, I'm not a huge makeup wearer. A little bit of lip gloss, a little bit of mascara, and some really kick-ass high heels do it for me.
I love that. There are studies where if a kid is going to take an SAT and they put on the same clothes that they've been feeling good in and that they maybe have studied for in the past, that actually helps them do better. So there is something, maybe it's a talisman, maybe I don't know what it is, but it's also just that confidence level.
It is. And there's also a really interesting trick. There is real science behind power moves. So if you ever need within 2 minutes to completely change your brain chemistry to feel more in control and powerful, doing the Superman pose, which is your arms up in the V, or the Wonder Woman pose where your hands are on your hips, if you do that for 2 minutes, it actually changes your brain chemistry and gives you more confidence going into a situation. I teach gratitude. I've written 2 books on gratitude. I talk about boundaries. I talk about ways to be more confident. You don't even have to believe me. You just have to try it. And if you try it, it will work, and then you will believe me. I don't need you to believe me first.
Yeah, it's that mind-body connection. Even smiling helps you feel better, even if you force yourself. You can be scared and you can be brave at the same time. What happens when we decide to live bravely?
Yeah. The concept of conflicting emotions is such an interesting one. If we are honest with ourselves, we live in a state of conflicting emotions all the time. There's always a little joy and maybe a little sadness. We can feel scared and we can still be brave. One of my favorite stories, when my second daughter was in 6th grade, her class went ziplining. And her teacher, who's a middle-aged white guy, went ziplining with them, and he is terribly afraid of heights. And I said, why did you do it if you're that afraid? And he said, the thing about fear is it gives you the chance to be brave. Without fear, there is no opportunity to be brave. And bravery can look like something very different for all of us. For him, it was ziplining. For one of the women I interviewed on my podcast, based on some traumatic experiences in her childhood, holding a small furry animal was the bravest thing she'd ever done in her life. And for some people, it's going to the grocery store. And for some people, it's just choosing to get up and start your day. And then for some, it's bigger. For some, it's sitting with your child as they're dying or writing a book. It's normal to feel apprehension and fear as you're doing all of those things. What's magical is choosing to do them anyway, because they matter. And because they make you a stronger, happier, healthier person. And that is contagious to everyone around you. You will start to notice when you choose bravely more regularly, that the people around you will do the same. I hear my daughters chatter amongst themselves, I did this brave thing the other day. It's a language that they know. and they're proud of themselves. And when we feel good about ourselves, we give so much more to the world around us.
Also, it feels really good when you take that risk on yourself and then you come out the other end. In this time of COVID, we can be working 100% of the time from home and not sleeping or eating well. What's the best way to achieve that work-life harmony?
This is a limiting voice that sits with me, and it has all of my adult life, that I don't work hard enough because I'm an entrepreneur. I work from home. My computer is with me all the time. My phone is with me all the time. But simply because you have access to all of the time doesn't mean it's the right choice to spend all of your time doing that. It's a very unhealthy situation to be in, and there's no thriving in it. You start to fail. You can't do everything 100%. And so creating a schedule, when I want you to create work-life harmony, I want you to check in with yourself on the way that you feel at the end of the day, the week, the month, the year. Am I spending my time in a way that feels good and effective? Am I making choices that are getting me towards my goals? And those goals cross the gamut. They could be business goals, but they could be personal goals. So let me give you a firsthand example. I told you earlier that my children are with their dad half the time. My schedule, I work far more hours when my kids are gone because I am committed to not working when they are home so that I can be there and be present with them at that time. So I say no to a lot of things when it's their time. And then I say yes to a lot of things when it's not their time. We're always saying yes and we're always saying no. You just have to decide which one you want to be embracing. And COVID has been a pain in my ass because now my kids don't go to school. So it used to just be nighttime, right? I'd be like, or afternoon, 3:00 in the afternoon on these days, I shut down early. And now they're home. I feel very lucky because it's really hard to work when they're home. If it's just my older kids, I can do most of the things, but you know what? They still need me too. I've had to be very gentle with myself and flexible and creative and forgiving because things are not the way that we want them to be. They are not the way that we work best. So you've got to try new things, but working all the time isn't the answer. And so creating a schedule, putting boundaries around it, sticking to it. I say for some people, if you have a separate space from where you're working, shut your computer and leave it there and move away. Some people really miss commuting. I know a lot of people hate commuting, but I have one client that she does her own commute. She wakes up in the morning, she gets ready, and then she goes and walks around the block before she goes in and sits down on her computer. And then when she's done with her work for the day, she shuts her computer and she packs up her bag and she goes and takes a walk around the block because mentally then she's shifting from personal time to work time and then from work time to personal time. So try different things, find out what works.
I like that. And she's exercising.
And she's exercising. Yeah.
Great. As a success and leadership coach, how do you create change by tapping into your clients' pain points?
My favorite thing about coaching is asking, what do you want from that? Why do you want to do that? Usually folks' first answer is not actually the reason. So we need to understand what hurts because the truth of the matter is we tolerate as much as we're willing to tolerate until we're no longer willing to tolerate it. So we have to understand the pain points. What hurts so badly that you are now ready to create change around that? And until you're ready, you're not coachable. I'm just going to lay it out. Until you're actually ready to say, I'm no longer willing to accept this reality. I will do the hard work to change it. No one can help you. You have to decide that completely on your own. But it's helpful for me as a coach or for other coaches to help you see what's possible if you put in the work. Once we understand what really hurts and what those pain points are, then we can say, imagine if you got this result instead. Imagine if you took this action and this thing happened. And they can start to visualize it and go, I think I like that. I tell people itty bitty intentional baby steps. So we take big things and we break them down into really small, bite-sized, intentional, actionable steps. And we just do them one little bit at a time without looking at the big picture on a micro level. You want to look at the big picture. You want a goal plan. You want a vision plan, but not every second of every day because it's too much. We just end up Netflixing and scrolling through social media if you're constantly looking at all the things you have to do to get where you want to go. So just look at the step in front of you for a while.
I like the idea of acknowledging the pain points because if you don't acknowledge the wound. You can't stop the bleeding.
If you're talking about an open wound, for the sake of an analogy, the first thing is going, oh my gosh, I have an open wound. And then you say, what am I going to do about this open wound? And then you think, okay, well, in the cabinet, there's a Band-Aid, but before I can put the Band-Aid on, I have to get a tissue and wipe off the blood that's running down my arm. Then I'm going to put the Band-Aid on, and then I'm going to take some Advil because it hurts. So you can actually take something as simple as put on a Band-Aid and break that down into 4 other steps. And sometimes we just need to make it the most small thing possible to start some momentum. It's just like, anything else. Once you start doing it and you realize it's not that hard and you can actually do it, we do a little more and a little more. I do NaNoWriMo every year, and I make myself sit for 15 minutes because I know that if I can get in a writing flow for 15 minutes, I'm probably going to write for an hour and 15 minutes. But it's the first 15 minutes. It's the first sitting down and get started that really counts. I love systems. My coaching method is called the Brave method. And Brave stands for boundaries, reassessment, reframing, resilience, action, accountability, vulnerability, and empowerment. And you can use that to grow and change and create anything that you want. But it has to come with flexibility. We need to be built like skyscrapers so that when it's windy, we flow with it instead of toppling over.
And be a little compassionate with ourselves.
Yes.
Right?
We're very often not compassionate with ourselves.
Yes.
We're quick to be compassionate for others, but not for ourselves.
That's right.
Yeah.
Why can't you be successful in business if your personal life isn't successful?
You can't, because if your life is not functioning in a way that satisfies you, you take that energy into your workspace. And vice versa. If work is a hot mess and you hate it and you're miserable, you go home and you take that energy into it. And so finding a harmony and a balance between the two, it ebbs and flows and it comes and goes. And that's why the Brave method that I use as a coaching platform works personally and professionally, because these things are all interwoven. They don't live in separate containers. We are one human that moves back and forth in all the elements of our life. We have to honor all of them in a 360 manner. Success to you is as defined by you. And we have to stop categorizing our success based on what somebody else has done that we deem successful. We have to define success for ourselves. That's something that I take my clients through. What needs to happen for you to feel successful in this way about this thing? And they tell me, and I say, great. I have a client who's an energy healer, and she was terrified. She started out in a different business, but she's been doing energy healing for a while for friends on the side and didn't want to put it out there. And I said, so what needs to change for you to feel comfortable enough to start actually promoting this and charging money? She said, I have to do 20 free sessions and then I'll feel successful enough in my practice to sell it. And I said, okay, great. When can you have 20 done? How do we break that down? Well, if I could do 5 a week, right? And we just made a plan and then you start creating the plan. So you have to ask yourself, that's the R in the Brave method, that reassessment and reframing. What's going to make you feel successful in this endeavor? And then you plan it, and then you do it.
And how do you celebrate success?
I'm a big fan of celebration. In fact, on my podcast, The Brave Files, we ask about celebration. Celebration is a little bit of a lost art. And I often hear people say, oh, I don't really do that. But what happens when we stop to acknowledge goodness is that we create more joy in our lives. We have more momentum to keep going. We celebrate that with other people. Even if you don't mean to, your energy then transcends to other people. And there's more stuff I'm a dance party fan. Maybe it's a hoot and holler. Some people have a bell. Maybe it's a nice meal out. Maybe it's a walk around the block. It can be little things. It can be big things, but build celebration into your life and into your business. Every day, find something to celebrate. It's completely game-changing.
And it's joyful.
It's so joyful.
And we should be celebrating more. I love the idea of the bell. what a fun idea.
Right? Yeah.
So you've written a children's book called Grow Grateful. And you also wrote another gratitude journal. Tell us about why you wrote these books.
When I was going through my own transformation and journey, gratitude was something that became a lifeline for me, an absolute game changer. And I was curious about it. Like, did I make this up in my head? Like, why is this working for me? Well, guess what? No big surprise. I did not make it up in my head. There's an actual entire practice called positive psychology. And I chose to study it and get certified in positive psychology. There are a lot of cool things that come out of positive psychology, but the number one thing that comes out of it is the idea that we can be happier. The scientist that invented positive psychology, his name was Martin Seligman, and psychology used to be the practice of going from negative to zero. And it still is. Psychology is like, how do we take somebody from bad to flat? And Marty said, there's got to be a way to go from zero to plus. There's got to be a way to increase happiness. And it turns out that there is. And the number one way to do that is by having a regular gratitude practice, by listing out things that you're grateful for and why you're grateful for them. They've done studies on this. If you have an MRI before you start a gratitude practice, and then you do it every day and you go back in 3 months, they can see a chemical difference in your brain. The reason for that is our minds cannot hold negative and positive thoughts at the same time. Doesn't mean you don't have the negative thought. It just means you choose not to dwell on it. And the more we stay in a positive mindset, the happier we feel. And when you are conscious of what's around you to be grateful for, you start to recognize there's more good than bad. You're more loved than not. You're more supported than not. You're not alone. You have community. You have safety. You have protection. There's joy and beauty. And if you ask yourself why you're grateful for something, so for example, today I'm very grateful, Rachel, that you're having me on the show and I get this opportunity. Why am I grateful for that? Because I have a mission and a message that I want to share with people, and because I love supporting other podcasters. So now that I've identified why that matters to me, I can repeat that behavior. If we don't understand why it matters, it's harder to repeat that behavior. I knew I wanted to write about it, and I wanted to give people a resource for expressing and sharing their gratitude. So both books, the first one is called Shift Your Focus, and it's a gratitude journal for adults that tends to be geared towards entrepreneurs. You don't have to be an entrepreneur, but that tends to be the audience that loves it the most. And so the first bit is about my journey, the science behind gratitude, different ways to practice it and why. And then there are 180 entries. And I ask you what you're grateful for and why. What are your high fives and personal wins for the day, because they're different. And then there are 180 unique prompts. Every single one of them is different to make you think about gratitude in a way that you wouldn't normally. One of the examples is, what teacher from high school are you most grateful for? How often do you think about them? Or what flavor of ice cream are you most grateful for? And as soon as that book hit the shelves, people started to ask, can I do this with my family? Well, sure, you can do it with your family. It's just not necessarily written in a way that's going to be attractive to kids. So I started working on the next one, which is called Grow Grateful. And it's for kids and families. If your kids are old enough, they can do it completely on their own. And if they're not, then you can do it with them. It can be a family practice. And I interviewed a bunch of parents. We did focus grouping and all sorts of things. So the written content is different as well. We uncovered some lovely truths. I'm telling you, kids are so smart. One young 11-year-old said to me, I think there's a difference in being grateful and expressing gratitude. And she's right, because one is internal and one is external. So I added the question, how did you express gratitude towards others today? So that we're constantly striving to put that gratitude out into the universe and share it with the people around us. My urge to you all is to have a gratitude practice. I don't care how you do it. You can have my journal, or you can use a blank page or your phone or your computer. Don't just think it. It only works if it's verbalized, if it comes out and is expressed. So however you want to do it, do yourself a favor and start a gratitude practice.
It also attracts positive energy, which
Absolutely.
is other people that are smiling and grateful, and it's kind of a net. So I love that. Sounds like your books would make great holiday gifts. We'll have a link in the show notes.
Thank you.
I know that you believe giving back is very important when it comes to success and leadership. How and why do you give back?
One of the things that's always been deeply rooted in me, and then again came up when I was being certified for positive psychology, is that we are our happiest and most joyful selves when what we're doing is bigger than us. It hit home for me because it's something I've always felt very strongly about. We live in this wide world, and it's so easy to put your blinders on and stay in your lane and not look at what's happening around you. But it's so much more incredible when you open up and you participate in all of the joy that's happening around the globe. And people need us and we need them. It's literally our duty as humans of the world to support one another. And so it is important to me. We talk about charitable organizations in every episode of my podcast. I'm super committed personally to both fundraising and in-person community charitable work, or sometimes it's international work as well. It just depends on what I'm doing. And it gives me a sense of purpose that's so much bigger than me. And I don't want the whole world to be about me. That feels very lonely. I really enjoy making it something bigger.
Giving is the best gift of all.
It is. It's wonderful.
Intentionally choosing to be brave is contagious. Tell us about your podcast, The Brave Files.
The Brave Files is a show where I interview people who have stepped out of fear and into bravery in every possible way of life. It is not a business podcast. It's categorized as mental health on Apple because of positive mental health. And I interview people. We just talk. We just tell their stories. And there's a resounding human connection. People see themselves, or they see the possibility for themselves in different ways with every single conversation. It's such a joy to produce this show.
My platform is the same. I think that you would agree with me that one of the best things that comes out of it is that connection.
Absolutely.
Is meeting new people, often like-minded people, and getting to know them better.
Absolutely.
So, Heather, at 20 years old, where were you?
College.
Where did you go?
I went to Wittenberg University in Springfield, Ohio. The coolest thing now about Springfield, Ohio is that's where John Legend is from, but he's 10 years younger than me. So he was there when I was there, but not famous.
So you were in Springfield, Ohio at 20 years old. If you could write your younger 20-year-old self a Dear Heather love letter, knowing what you know today, what would you tell yourself?
Buckle up, sister. Like most 20-year-olds, I think I thought I knew all the things I needed to know. And now my almost 46-year-old self, I can say, I'm so glad I don't know all the things I need to know. I'm so glad that there is a learning opportunity around every corner. I would tell myself to seek more learning opportunities. It's not that I don't want you to be self-assured. I want you to be very self-assured, young Heather, but rise to the occasion and be open-minded.
That open mind will really take you far.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do that brings you happiness? Do you have any happiness habits?
I have a few. I love to walk, and I do a lot of it daily. I take hot baths with Epsom salt. I read, and I bake with my children.
What do you read? What genre?
I fluctuate. I do businessy books, and historical fiction and memoirs are my favorite. I like to listen to memoirs, particularly if they're read by the author. And I like to actually read a hard copy of historical fiction.
God, you and I have so much in common. Also, I love listening to memoirs too, because they're potential great guests. We love hearing people's stories. This has been amazing. I am grateful to have you sharing your beautiful message and inspiring others, and you being authentic and getting to know you further.
Thank you. I am doing a free 10-day workshop on the Brave Method that starts December 8th. So anybody out there who was digging what I had to say and you're ready to find out what this is about and to take some action on your life, it's super hands-on, very interactive, very fun. I just give so much content away. We have such great time together. And I would love to have any of you join us for this free event. And I can give you the links to share, Rachel, but the Brave Method workshop is coming on December 8th.
I will make sure to include that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Enjoy your daughters and baking, and take care. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for having me, Rachel.
Thanks. Bye, honey.
Bye.
This is Rachel Steinman. For more information or to contact me with any questions, comments, or guest ideas, please check out rightnowrachel.com. That's right with a W. Thank you so much for listening, subscribing, and sharing, dear family. And if you found value in what you've just heard, I would love and so appreciate a great review on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Until next time, I wish you love, happiness, and good mental health.